Hello friends, so in this video we're going to create our first repository. So now we have installed Git on our computer, and that means we'll need to open command line interface. I'm just using terminal for macOS, so well, this is iTerm actually. You can use a different terminal replacement like iTerm or terminal that's already there by default. You can use Git Bash for Windows, whatever you want. But basically, it needs to be a CLI. Okay, so we do need to open a text editor, though, so I'm just going to use VS Code for my text editor. Of course, you can use whatever text editor you want, like Sublime, Atom, whatever you're comfortable with. We're not going to use any particular feature of any particular text editor, so that's why it's just up to you. But here you can see I've created two directories, one called Project 1 and one called Project 2. Okay, so now I'm going to create a repository in each one of these directories. So first of all, I'm going to create a repo for Project 1. Now, the first thing that we'll need to do is navigate into the Project 1 directory where we want to create a repository in our command line. So I'm going to say cd desktop, switch on desktop directory, and then cd git and GitHub. Then inside the Git and GitHub folder, I'm going to open Project 1. And because I've created Project 1 under the Git and GitHub folder on my desktop, this is where I want to create this repository. So how do we go about doing that? Okay, to create a repo, all we need to do is say git init, which of course stands for initialize, hit enter. And that's going to initialize an empty Git repository inside this project. Okay, so now we can see this .git folder. We can expand it, and you'll see all of these different things inside here now. I'm not going to go into detail about what all these files are because you don't really need to know what all these files are inside the Git folder yet. But yeah, we'll do some advanced stuff in another tutorial. But for now, all you need to know is that it's here. This Git folder has all kinds of great stuff in it. All right, so this is our Git repository with this .git folder. So it's going to be tracking any kind of changes that we make inside this project folder. This .git folder is generally hidden unless you change your default settings. So to see hidden files and folders, in case now you're wondering, just open your project directory and follow these keys, Command Shift and dot. Okay, so press these at the same time and it will show you the hidden files on macOS. On the other hand, you can see hidden files and folders just by typing ls-al, and this will show you all the files and folders. Okay, then inside this directory, let's create index.html. So I'm going to say touch index.html. And by the way, this touch command, it's only working if you're on a Mac or Linux. It's not going to work in Windows. You will have to create that manually if you're running Windows command line interfaces. Okay, so as we see this, see all these index files are green. So normally when we're not in a repo, this is just going to be gray. But we are in a Git repository. VS Code recognizes this index file is a new file that wasn't there before. So it changes file to green, and that's just to let us know that some new kind of change has been made. So I'm just going to create HTML file for now and save it. Okay, so you can create all your files inside your project directory, and Git will recognize it and keep track of it. Of course, you may create a Git repo from scratch, or your project folder doesn't have to be empty for you to create a repository. We could create a repository in a folder which just contains subfolders and documents. Like this one. Inside Project 2, we have 2 documents. So this already has an index file and a styles.css file. So if we wanted to create a repository in here, we just do the same thing. So I'm going to say cd dot to go up one directory, and this time I'm going to say cd project 2. So now we're in project 2. So inside here, we can say the same thing, git init, to initialize a repository. All right, so now this is a Git repository. So now we can see these documents are being tracked as well. So we have now created a repository from scratch and a repository in an existing project directory, which already has a few files. So in the next tutorial, we're going to start editing files and then adding them to a staging area, which you may remember my mentioning in the last tutorial. So we're going to take a break here, come back in the next one, and carry on.